So AOC a few weeks back was out at some movie or something, and she was sort of heckled by people who were trying to get her to say that what Israel is doing in Gaza is genocide. And she was kind of standoffish and defensive, and, she wouldn't say it. And, a lot of people were concluding at the time, like, this is totally chicken shit, right? Like, if you have eyes, if you're following what's happening, it is kind of clear that what's happening is a genocide. So led to quite a bit of a backlash. But something since then has changed. I don't know what it is. My theory, because so many other people have had an awakening moment about this, but I think this happened before that video came out. I'm not sure. There was a video that was released by Al Jazeera of these 4 young boys walking, probably, 12, 13, 14, that range. And not holding any weapons, not threatening anybody, nowhere near the IDF, just walking, and they get killed by a drone from the sky like that. There's no way you could even come up with some sort of cover story of how they're aggressive or they're Hamas or what. There's nothing there, right? That seemingly woke a lot of people up like, holy shit, this is how they're acting? Well, if they're doing this, how many other instances of the exact same shit are they doing? Well, we already know. They killed people waving a white flag. We've seen it 1,000 times, right? Shouldn't be surprising to anybody, but apparently it is to a lot of people, but they're waking up. So she seemingly had an enlightenment moment, and she comes out and says the following.
In this moment, 1.1 million innocents in Gaza are at famine's door. A famine that is being intentionally precipitated through the blocking of food and global humanitarian assistance by leaders in the Israeli government. This is a mass starvation of people, engineered and orchestrated, following the killing of another 30,000, 70% of whom were women and children killed. If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes. It looks like the forced famine of 1.1 million innocents. It looks like thousands of children eating grass as their bodies consume themselves while trucks of food are slowed and halted just miles away. It looks like good and decent people who do nothing, or too little, too late. It is against United States law to provide weapons to forces who block United States humanitarian assistance. And that is exactly what is happening right now. So much so that the president himself stated during the State of the Union that the United States must and will be building its own port to let aid through. It will be too late. The time is now to force compliance with U.S. law and the standards of humanity, and fulfill our obligations to the American people to suspend the transfer of U.S. weapons to the Israeli government in order to stop and prevent further atrocity.
So she woke up. She woke up. And she's being as brave now as Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Summer Lee. A lot of them were earlier to it. But she's now at that same place. And look, I will say this. This has been undeniable for over 150 days, right? This has been undeniable since probably like October 15th, 20th. Why do I say that? Because Israel announced we're going to do a total medieval-style siege. No food, no fuel, no water, no electricity, no anything. Well, that is, by definition, collective punishment of 2.3 million Gazans. By the way, how many of those people are Hamas, you ask? 30,000. So punishing 2.3 million for the actions of 30,000. So from that moment on, this should have woken everybody up. Oh. Because imagine they do that to you. Imagine they do that to your friends, to your family. Somebody you don't know, have nothing to do with, but purports to represent you, does something bad, and then they cut off power and food and fuel and water to your entire block or to your entire town. You'd be like, this is the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my life. This is obviously collective punishment. This is obviously a colossal crime. Well, now, it took a while, but she's in the right place. So after this, of course, this leads to... She was getting backlash from the left previously when she wouldn't say it's a genocide. Now the backlash is coming from the other perspective, right? From people who don't agree with her because they don't agree that this is a genocide. It's the establishment, it's the corporate Democrats, it's corporate media, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so she goes on CNN and she doubles down. Let's watch.
You gave a very forceful speech on the House floor Friday about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. You called on President Biden to cut off U.S. military aid to Israel. I think we have a clip of part of what you said. Let's roll that.
If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes. It looks like the forced famine of 1.1 million innocents. We must write our story in this moment of what it means and who we are as Americans. And our story must be not that we were good men who did nothing.
Now, clearly, not enough aid is getting in. Clearly, the conditions for the Palestinian people are horrific and much more needs to be done. Genocide is a word that has serious and specific connotations and allegations. It's defined by the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group.
Yes, Jake, that is how it's defined. The idea that you don't see that, or it's a question as to whether or not it's happening, it's just so absurd.
Just to clarify here, you believe the Israeli military, the Israeli government are actively trying, they intend to destroy the Palestinian people, and not that what's happening is horrible, but it's happening because Israel is going after the terrorists of Hamas who attacked them on October 7th, and Hamas embeds within the civilian population?
We just told you, they're starving 2.3 million people. How can you look at that and go, but bro, this is a highfalutin hunt for Hamas? Makes no sense. They bombed over 20 hospitals, schools, standalone UN buildings, mosques, churches, every kind of civilian infrastructure you can imagine. Like, what kind of a question is this? Look, I know he's doing his, like, news anchor, both sides type shtick here, but Jesus Christ, Jake, this question is, like, 7 IQ.
Because Israel is going after the terrorists of Hamas who attacked them on October 7th, and Hamas embeds within the civilian population?
Well, Jake, you're absolutely right. This word is extremely serious. It's one that's taken with extraordinary gravity. And to me, the threshold of intent is a high one. It is a serious one and is not one that is made lightly. However, when we look at the precipice of what is happening with a forced famine of 1.1 million Gazans, where multiple governments, NGOs, and even officials within the United States State Department have stated themselves plainly that the Israeli government and leaders in the Israeli government are intentionally denying, blocking, and slow-walking this aid and are precipitating a mass famine. I believe we have crossed the threshold of intent. It is horrific. I think it is extremely clear and it is extremely important that all people understand the difference between people and their governments, Israelis and the Israeli government, Palestinians from Hamas. But what we are seeing here, I think, with a forced famine is beyond our ability to deny or explain away. There is no targeting of Hamas in precipitating a mass famine of 1 million people, half of whom are children.
So I asked Israeli officials about your speech, and they say, we are allowing hundreds of aid trucks into Gaza every single day. They're trying to increase those numbers. They have to inspect the cargo.
They're trying to increase those numbers as if they don't have 100% control. They're the ones who determine what gets in. They've blocked over 70% of the aid trucks, and that's an old number. I'm led to believe it's gone up since then, because that was prior to the ICJ plausible genocide ruling. So, oh man, they're trying, bro. They're trying to try to let more stuff in. You know what you do? You say, go ahead. Here, I'm trying. I'm letting you go ahead. Drive right through. Instead, they empty every truck, go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. They find one thing that they don't want in there. They turn the whole truck around. It can have 98% food in there. If there's one tent that has some pipes with it to build the tent, because, you know, they don't have fucking houses anymore. They need tents. They go, oh, that could theoretically, potentially, hypothetically be used for a bomb. So turn it all back around. They're trying, bro. They're trying to let food in, bro.
Sure, no weapons are getting in, weapons that would be used by Hamas against the people of Israel. Israeli officials also argue this war could end tomorrow if Hamas freed the hostages and laid down the arms.
You know what? It actually can't, Jake. The war will not end tomorrow. If Hamas released all the hostages, it would not be released. They would not end the war tomorrow. Israel would not end the war. Why? Because they said, let's make a deal. You give up all the hostages, and it'll be a 6-week pause. So now, even if they give up all the hostages, after 6 weeks, boom, we're going to go right back to doing what we're doing right now. Netanyahu comes out and says, I blocked a Palestinian state, and I will continue to block a Palestinian state. You can't work with Hamas, they're terrorists. You can't work with the Palestinian Authority either. This is what he says. The Palestinian Authority trains terrorists for the future. So if you can't work with Hamas, you can't work with the Palestinian Authority, you say I'm forever going to block Palestinian state, and you say, if you release all the hostages, I'll pause for 6 weeks. What you're saying is, I have the intention, I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing, which is genocide and ethnic cleansing.
They also, Israeli officials also argue, this war could end tomorrow if Hamas freed the hostages and laid down the arms. Do you disagree?
I do disagree, because when we are talking about famine, the actions of Hamas should not be tied to whether a 3-year-old can eat.
Ooh. Damn, son. That was a devastating line. And that's right. That's what's happening.
Actions of Hamas do not justify forcing thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to eat grass as their bodies consume themselves. We and the Israeli government has a right to go after Hamas. But we are talking about a population of millions of innocent Palestinians. We are talking about collective punishment, which is injustifiable. And the excuses that the Israeli government is giving about what they are and are not allowing simply do not square with what the UK government is stating, with what international aid organizations are stating, and even what our own State Department officials are stating, which is that they are not allowing aid to go through. When they're talking about inspections, we're talking about U.S. aid, the United States aid. And so I think that if we are to operate as allies, then we must operate in good faith to uphold the principles of democracy, which includes respect for human rights, and also proving the value of our democracy, which is that we are different than authoritarian, and we are different from other types of regimes with no regard for innocent people.
Here's the calculation for AOC and any Democrat with a conscience. Guys, AIPAC is going to try to spend against you and take your ass out anyway. From the tiniest, mildest critique of just Netanyahu, because this is how a lot of this is phrased. The right-wing government of Netanyahu is the problem, right? Like, this is how a lot of it's phrased, to like water down the criticism as if the next person wouldn't be just as barbaric and insane as Netanyahu, right? Even if you do the watered down criticism, they unleash holy hell on you. They spend against you. AIPAC guns for you with tens of millions of dollars. So if they're going to come after you anyway, why not take the proper stand as a matter of morality and ethics and having a conscience? I mean, you should have done it anyway, despite the consequences. But if the consequences are going to come no matter what, why not? Why not? Because hopefully we're looking at a sea change now, where people are waking up to the deleterious impact of the Israel lobby and AIPAC money and DMFI, and just how much that impacts our politicians and their perspective and the policies they support. And I don't know how much I don't know how much that money can hold back this giant wave of a realization where even 50% of Biden voters from 2020 are saying, yeah, this is a genocide. And then an even higher percentage say, it might be, right? I don't know how much the money can override that hardcore political reality. So she's joining the chorus with Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Summer Lee, Cori Bush, and the others who've been the most brave and out there the earliest, right? All I can ask is that more and more of these politicians come to the proper conclusion, because at this point, it's unavoidable and inescapable, and nobody has been saying the things she just said on CNN. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.